Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Yvonne, I hope you're okay. And viewers, I hope you have had a very beautiful day, the most productive of all. So we move on, we're going to IAS 6, which is on impairment. And just share. Okay. So under impairments or IAS 6, that actually governs or guides on how to impair assets. So we'll be looking at first on identifying possible impairments, external versus internal. Secondly, to perform impairment review if identified possible impairments. Thirdly, to record the impairment. So what are the indications of impairment for an asset? First, we look at external sources. A significant decline in the asset's market value more than expected by normal use or passage of time. Of the sudden, this particular asset has lost value, maybe because out there the demand has actually gone down. It could be, say for example, houses in a particular area, residential area. Most of the tenants, they are leaving that area, going to another area, say for example, leaving Kablonga, going to Roma. Regardless of how these assets or buildings or houses look, they could be in a very good shape, but the market value for that particular area has actually gone down. Therefore, there will be need to test the impairment and possibly impair the assets. Here, obviously, when you talk about impairment, we're actually looking at the recoverable amount against the carrying amount. So if the carrying amount is higher than the recoverable amount, that gap, that is what we're actually going to impair. Secondly, under external sources, it could be a significant adverse change in the technological, economic, or legal environment. So that is actually going to act as a trigger point to impair an asset. There could be also internal sources, which are impairments that are driven by internal circumstances. One of them would be obsolescence or physical damage. This asset is damaged. It has to be impaired. This asset has gone out of fashion. It has to be impaired. That maybe could sit under external sources. This asset over time, it has lost its value. It has to be impaired. Significant changes in the period are expected in the way the asset is being used. Is the asset becoming idle? Plans for early disposal or discounting? Restructuring the operation where the asset is used. That's internal sources. Internal sources. Or evidence that the asset's economic performance will be worse than expected. You guys have done the simulations, and what is coming out is that this particular asset may not give you the meaningful value that you need over time. The economic performance of that asset is going to dwindle. Therefore, there is need for you to think of impairing, or operating losses or net cash outflows for the asset. The asset consistently is giving you losses. That is a signal to show or to justify the reason why you have to impair the asset. Sadly, loss of a key employee, that could actually lead to an asset to be impaired. Secondly, now is on impairment review. How do you do an impairment review? I'd already mentioned if the carrying amount of value of the asset is greater than its recovery amount, it is impaired and should be written down to its recoverable amount. Recoverable amount, guys, has two elements in it. Any of the two that is greater, that is what you go for. Between the fair value less cost to sell and the value in use. So the fair value less cost to sell. This is the amount receivable from the sale of the asset less the cost of disposal. If you are to sell this asset, how much would you receive? That becomes your fair value less cost to sell. Obviously, less cost of disposal. The value in use is the present value of the future cash flows from the asset. Currently, for 2020, have been given the responsibility to develop an IAS 36 model that is actually going to look at the impairment for all our subsidiaries. And we have had the problems on determining the first one on the fair value less cost to sell. So even the standard advises, maybe not the standard, but the best practice out there, they advise to use the value in use. It's more straightforward because with this, you just project into the future for 5 years. You can use the budgets, but again, on the budgets, you have to also look at issues like how much you comply to the budgets as an organization. If you find the compliance level is very poor, then there will be no need to use the budgets, maybe the forecast and all that. But every number that you put in your computations for future cash flows, which then you discount today, must be auditable. It's something that should be very easy to justify. As I saying, value in use is the present value of the future cash flows from the asset. Three, record the impairment. You have found that, for example, the value in use is higher than the fair value less cost to sell, but is lower than the carrying amount. Therefore, that gap is your impairment. So what do? You have to record the impairment. So the reduction in carrying value is taken through profit or loss unless related to a revalued asset, in which case it is taken to any revaluation surplus first. So the cash generating units of the specific assets, goodwill, remaining assets, which you can use your pro rata. But just know that that is taken through profit and or loss. Unless otherwise, for the assets that have been revalued or related to revalued assets, that's when you can actually take to the revaluation surplus account. So this is a question. Example 1, CGU impairment. Peter owned 100% of the equity share capital of Mwenda, a wholly owned subsidiary. The assets at the reporting date of Mwenda were as follows. We have the goodwill, buildings, plant and equipment, other intangibles, receivables, and cash, giving us 17 million kwacha. On the reporting date, a fire within one of Mwenda's buildings led to an impairment review being carried out. The recoverable amount of the business was determined to be 9.8 million kwacha, yet the carrying amount was 17 million before all these other things. The fire destroyed some plant and equipment with a carrying value of 1.2 million, and there was no option but to scrap it. So from our plant and equipment, whatever value that we have there, we have to less 1.2 million. The other intangibles consist of a license to operate Mwenda's plant and equipment. Following the scrapping of some of the plant and equipment, a competitor offered to purchase the patent for 1.5 million. So if we check on the intangibles, you had 2,000, meaning that what is actually removed will be a 500,000. The receivable and cash are both stated at their realizable value and do not require impairment. You cannot impair receivable, even if the whole building was bent. Receivable doesn't. You don't keep it in the wardrobes. Cash is in the bank, but at least we've been guided what to do. Show how the impairment loss in Mwenda is allocated amongst the assets. Not within a group of companies where there are several subsidiaries, the individual CGUs are tested for impairment first before the overall value of the business is tested truly. So we go back to the question. Maybe I don't need a marker. So this is what we'll do, guys. The whole lot of goodwill will be impaired. Here on the plant and equipment, remember we'll remove 1,200. On other intangibles, we'll remove 500,000. On receivables, nothing will be removed. So meaning that on this goodwill, we are removing 2,400. So in short, we'll have 6,000 for the buildings. We'll have 4,000. Here we'll have 1,500. And we'll have 1,400. How much in total? This is 10,000, 11,500, 12,500, 12,900. So 17,000 minus 12,900 because this becomes your recoverable amount. Sorry. This is your recoverable amount. and this is your carrying amount. I'll just do like this, your carrying amount. What you get will be 3,100. This is what you're going to impair. So if this is what you're going to impair, where does it come from? If you look at this, it will come from here, meaning from the 3,100, 600, you remain with 700. First, you have your 1, 2. You have your 1, 2 that has gone. You have your 500 that has gone, meaning that the difference, it will come from buildings. Because this one is already taken care of in here. So you remain with the 3,100. So the difference will come from the buildings. That is how you're going to reduce the value of your property or your business. Thank you so much, and bye bye. The next topic would be on IAS 20 on government grants. So stay tuned.